Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday, and welcome to this new Uno live streaming, Uno live coding and streaming. So we're looking at a few things about the Uno platforms on every Tuesday. News, coding, questions, and everything around the Uno platform. So if you have any questions, drop by the chat and let me know if you have anything to say. So today we're going to be taking a look at a few things, and one of the updates that we just put out today is the Uno check tool. That tool is actually quite interesting. It's something that was originally published by the .NET team, the .NET MAUI team, by one of the Johns of the .NET team. So Jonathan Dick Redeth, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And that tool is giving the ability to check your installation for anything that may be missing when developing your application on the Uno platform. So we've adjusted that tool so that it validates the specificities of the Uno platform, but it can also work. It will actually work for .NET 6, and the original one that works on MAUI is doing validation specifically for MAUI. So we added that. So what I'm going to do is basically do that right away on my machine, and we're going to take a look at what that does on that machine specifically. So it's a .NET tool, and I think I still So it's a .NET tool that we published on NuGet. And you can install it using .NET Tool install global and running it like this. So .NET will install something like that, by looking at the NuGet package that's available at NuGet.org actually. So you can go to NuGet NuGet.org and validate that the package that is there is actually the same one. So we actually published one 21 minutes ago, which is 0.11, and we're going to be updating that tool very frequently with newer versions and new features that are for the latest and greatest for running applications there. So it validates a few things, and let's run the tool. So to run the tool, you just run Uno check, and that'll do. So it needs to run on admin because you need to have access to quite a few things from the device, and it will check if you have OpenJDK installed with the proper version. It will check that you have one specific version of Visual Studio, that you have the specific workloads that are needed for an Uno application to run properly, like the UWP development tooling installed, or the mobile.NET development, so previously named Xamarin, and a few other things, like everything that breaks every time, the emulator not installed properly, the build tooling, the platforms that need to be installed, so Android API, Android SDK 30, which most of the time can break, so it's something that needs to be installed. And if there's something that's not installed properly on your machine, we'll tell you, the tool will tell you what to do, and in some cases can actually do the installation for you without you having to do it manually. So that is the kind of thing that we're checking up to. We're also checking for WSL being installed. It's something that you may need if you want to do some WebAssembly AOT. One of the things that has actually been moving there, which is enabling this for Windows. So it's something that's coming up without having to, being able to build for AOT without having to use WSL. So when you're on Windows, you're still using everything Windows and not adding anything that has to do with Linux, which was originally required. So stay tuned for that. It's gonna happen soon. So that's it. So that's the Uno platform check tool. It's something that you will need when you're installing a new machine or upgrading to a newer version of the Uno platform for newer dependencies, or when we're adding new requirements, and something that will be very, very important to have when running for .NET 6 with their whole new workloads experience that's been added by the .NET team. So that's something that I've been personally waiting for quite a while. it's something that basically allows you to have something that where when you can download the .NET SDK directly without bringing many megabytes of data as part of the installer, and only install a few of the SDKs or the workloads one by one. So you want to install Android or install iOS or WPF for that matter, because at this point when you're installing the .NET SDK, you're downloading WPF as well. Especially if you're on Linux, it doesn't make sense that much. That's something that's going to be changed in the future, where additional SDKs are going to be pulled out from the runtime itself. So it's going to be very small, and you add only the workloads that you need. And that's something that's happening very soon with .NET and the mobile development. So that's it for Uno check. So on the other thing that I've been progressing, so I talked last week about the debugger for WebAssembly, and that's something that was not working quite well. I mean, if you're creating an application that runs using WebAssembly, it was not working well. So we reached out to the .NET team, and we actually quite an interesting debugging experience with one of the members of the .NET team. I'm going to show you what the result is. So we're going to be creating, I think maybe there's that application that I created back last week. Maybe, let's see, I don't know what that one does. I think it's the one that I created last week to be able to test that one specifically. So we're going to check. And there was the debugger already set up last week. So we're going to be updating that. So launch settings. Yes, I think. Okay. So the important part is that when you're creating an application that needs to be running with the debugger, you have to have in the launch setting.json, you have to have the inspect URI set properly. That's something that is available as part of the documentation for the Bootstrapper. So if you go in the README for the Bootstrapper, you have what to do here to create a basic console application that runs for .NET 5, but also what's needed to enable the debugger when you're using Visual Studio. So that's one of the things that you can do to enable that. And so now we've been updating the Bootstrapper. So what I'm going to do is just update the Bootstrapper to the latest build that is available as part of our dev feed for now, so that you can see what that means. So let's see. So updating to the latest, and then we're going to be rebuilding the application. And we're going to take a look at what the debugger does. And hopefully it will behave a lot better than last week, where when you wanted to put the breakpoint there, it wasn't behaving properly. So we're going to put that breakpoint again and make sure that everything is working. Not rebuilding UWP, it doesn't make sense that much. So there it is. So let's start debugging for Visual Studio. From Visual Studio. So we're starting the application. It starts on the side here. And then if it all works properly, we should be having something that allows for us to stop on the breakpoint here. And there we go. So that works properly. So now last week, when we tested that, when I click on the button here, there were a few things that were completely broken. So now let's see if that works a bit better. So now we have here is the breakpoint that hit properly. We have the stack trace that works properly, but what was not working is the locals. And now the locals do work. So that's pretty nice. And we can see a lot of the things here, like the internals of what the application is. So it may be a bit verbose because it's many things that are not particularly useful when being used for an application here. So, but if you take a look at the properties here, you can get the actual height, you can get URIs and things like that. And one of the things that is interesting here is that you can get also the status here. And when I move for one, if I look again at the text, then I can see that the text property was actually updated. So that's pretty cool. And so one of the reasons it was not working is that we've been following the what the debugger was doing since the beginning well, actually, its inception, this probably was 2 years ago now, and the internal structure of what the integration with Visual Studio is doing has actually changed quite a bit since then. And one of the things that is interesting when taking a look at the way the debugger works is that if you go to debug windows and you open the processes, you're going to see that you have the JavaScript debugger that's hooked onto the browser, but you also have IIS Express that's also hooked onto there. So that means that if there's something that's happening inside of the process that's running there, and that process is actually the something that's provided by the Uno bootstrappers, by the Uno tooling, and that means that originally the debugger was running inside of that process. And when we're stopped here, that process is also stopped, which means that the debugger was also stopped and it could not communicate with the browser. So that means that the whole chain was not following up properly, and that window was actually not filling up properly. So now if we look at the processes that are running, there's now a new process that's available. So if I add the command line to the list, we'll see that in here, there's now that process that runs somewhere there that is called browser debug host. And that DLL is actually the right one to get the debugger running properly and not being stopped by Visual Studio when we're debugging. So it's kind of the internals of how the debugger works, but that's something that makes it quite interesting to take a look at. So if you were waiting for this to be available and working properly, so know that it's going to be available pretty soon, and that you will be able to troubleshoot your application pretty much the same way that any other WebAssembly application, namely in Blazor, can do at this point. And we're going to be following the same route because originally we were hosting the debugger proxy, so the component that communicates between Visual Studio and the browser. We were kind of hosting that in a different way, but now it's going to be just what the SDK provides, and we're going to be following up every time. So there's not going to be anything for us to do to follow up on the updates for Visual Studio. So that's one of the cool things there. I'm not sure if that was implemented. So no, we can't change the values there. Let's see, I don't know if it was implemented. So let's take a look at that does. Okay, so that is not yet implemented. So none of the things that the .NET team is aware of, and they want to know about it. So if you're doing things there that you want to know about and don't work, then they'll want to know about it. Let's see if there's something else that we can check there. So if I add content there, yeah, see, I have my grid. I have a few of the other things that are available there. So yeah, so that's it. So that's the story for now with the debugger for WebAssembly. So stay tuned for that part. It's going to be available pretty soon. Okay, so this is live coding for the Uno platform. So we're going to take a look at one issue that was opened recently, and that issue was opened by MK Notzer. And the report is that some behavior, so the formatting probably would help, but the changing the background and foreground fails, but height works. So when doing something like that, so it's the kind of bug reports that generally requires to have a bigger repro. So I'm generally asking for submitters of issues to create a new and actually a new full-fledged repro case, because sometimes it's a bit difficult to understand what's missing. And he did. So let's take a look at the repro and see what's happening there. So that's the application that he submitted. And we're going to be we're going to be taking a look at this. Okay, so yeah, so that's the thing that happens there because I opened the zip file. I opened the zip file with from the browser and it's tagged as unsafe. So let's do this again. Actually, it was not the right one. I think it was the other one. So let's unblock it so we can unzip it properly. Then let's open that one again. That's interesting. I thought there was a solution file there, but it doesn't look like there is one. Okay. I'm gonna download the file again. It looks like I did something incorrect there. Okay, yeah, I think I probably moved out the files and then everything was removed. So not particularly useful. Okay. So the file would be here. Okay, so removing the unblock here, extracting the file again. Okay, that's better. There it is. So we're going to take a look at this. So that's one of the unblocking feature is interesting because Visual Studio is taking a look at that that attribute in the file, so that if you're opening some solution that has been coming from an untrusted source, it tells you. So that's but it also means that a lot of the things from Visual Studio will fail if you continue opening that solution right away. So I validated that the content of the solution are correct. I'm not modifying anything specific. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. So the report is specifically for, there's actually no target there. So I don't know exactly for which one that is. So we're going to take a look at which. So let's try on WebAssembly first, or let's try Skia. That's one of the easiest ones. So debugging on Skia is actually easier because you can use a source link. That's something that is generally quite useful. Warning, long path. That does not. Okay, so that's interesting. What's about that one? Probably related to the long path, or could it? Okay. So there's one thing that happened. Maybe we can update to later version. So it's already on the later version. Generation does not happen properly, so it looks like we're doing something incorrect there. Maybe there's something wrong. Let's build it for WebAssembly to see if there's something else that we're missing here in the sample itself. Okay, so it's just Skia for some reason. Okay. So downloading the SDK. And we're going to see if the application does what it's supposed to do. So in the main page here, we have a test here. And we have some bindings to favorites. And it's modifying a few things. So it's modifying the background, height, and foreground. Okay, so one of the things that does not exist on text block is background. So that's expected to not work. So that may be the reason for it to not working. So foreground should work though. So let's take a look. So background is not a property that's available on WebAssembly on text block. Now, if you want to put a background on a text block, you have to put something like a border or something behind it, so that it actually takes a background. So let's start the app and see what it does. Okay, so it actually changed height, it looks like. So we're changing the height. The foreground doesn't change and background doesn't change. Okay, so background is not supposed to change because it's not a property that does exist, but there is a, okay, so that explains it. Okay, so what happens here is that it's not that it doesn't work. It's the fact that we're setting the foreground property to a string. And what we're trying to do is create a class directly from, I think it's a XAML reader here. Ah, that's interesting. Okay, so that's that class. So this is coming from the Microsoft Interactions core. And that one is actually doing some fancy things about generating some XAML instead. And that's probably why it does fail. Okay, so what we're taking a look at is the change property action that's trying to set the foreground to a color here that's defined as a string, because we don't know when defining that kind of string here to the content. So it needs to be transformed into something that is compatible with the foreground that's available there. So it should be, transformed from this to this, but because the change property action is doing some fancy things like generating some XAML and parsing it to replace something, I'm not sure exactly what, this fails. So we're going to go take a look at what the type converter helper is doing. So this is in the behaviors SDK. So we're going to take a look at that in the Uno platform repo. So behaviors, we have the Uno XAML behaviors, and we need to go to the type converter helper, which is typeconverterhelper.cs. So if we take this and search for that file, oh, not at the right location, XAML behaviors, typeconverterhelper.cs. And then we can see here that there's something that's done to transform the XAML here. So it's invoking XAML reader.load. It's converting one to the other. Okay, so that makes sense. So that means that the XAML reader is not doing the right thing. So it's kind of a fancy trick, taking some string and converting it to a type. So that's interesting because that was actually now it's available. There's something that does exactly that. Well, actually a bit bigger than that, but taking from one type to another. And I think they're using some kind of a, yeah, exactly. So that's what's happening here. So they're making content control, and in that inside that content control, they're setting it. They're creating a type with the namespace and letting the XAML reader do the work properly. And what they're doing afterwards is take the content that was created by the XAML reader and return it as the value of the converter here. So they're converting from a string to the destination full type here. Thing is that was probably developed a very long time ago. And there's one feature that's available now that was added because of Xbind, if I remember correctly. That is called the binding helper. And the binding helper is able to take the strings, finally in Infinity, to take all this and transform one type to the other. So we can't change that here for now. Probably make a pull request to change that and upgrade it. And change all this, and let's take a look at that function. I think it's binding helper. Binding helper XAML. So it's called XAML binding helper, and there's a method there that is called convert value, and it takes one object, generally the string that you took, and then converts it to the type that you've provided. And it's something that's used by Xbind. Well, it's actually been there since the beginning, so it's quite curious that they're not using it. Maybe they didn't know about it. Anyways, so that would be something to test out. So the whole function that we're looking at in XAML behavior could probably be replaced completely by just an invocation of that function to the convert value. But that's not what we need to fix here. So what we need to fix is the fact that if you're creating a, so what they're doing is basically creating a brush, because this is a brush. So the type the type of foreground is a brush. And what we're trying to do is take that string and convert it to a brush. So there's kind of a lot of implicit things that are available as part of the Uno platform, and WinUI in general, is when you can take a string and when you set it to a brush, it automatically converts to a solid color brush. But it looks like for some reason in the XAML reader, we're not doing this. So that's something we're going to have to go take a look at. So let's make an additional branch. I'm going to call that XAML reader brush. Okay. So we're going to open the solution in test mode. So using net461 here, using the solution filter that does contain only the unit tests. Otherwise, Visual Studio just blows up because it's too large. And then we're going to open just the unit test solution here. It was just for that filter specifically. So I'm still waiting on getting access to that a new fancy 64-bit Visual Studio. Can't happen soon enough. Okay, so there are quite a few tests for the XAML reader, and we're going to add a new one that does exactly what we need here. So it's in markup, if I remember correctly, and we have lots of tests that are available there. So we're validating quite a few things there, but we're probably not validating for brush that the conversion is happening properly. So what we're going to do is just add a new one and validate that we're doing what's supposed to be done. So we're going to do exactly what the XAML behaviors are doing. And when brush and solid color, no, string color. Okay, so inside this one, we're going to put a content control, and we're going to set a brush directly on this one. So this is taking time, as usual. Okay, so we're setting this here, and we're going to set a, can we set the brush like that? Maybe not. So we're creating a brush. I'm not even sure if we can create a brush like that. So let's take a look. So it's supposed to be doing fine. So we're supposed to be doing something like this, and then adding this is supposed to work. This is what the .NET framework is actually doing. So we can actually try that and see if that works properly on UWP. It's supposed to be. I'm not sure if the build was properly set up to show that. No. Okay, so there's no. Okay, so there's, see, so that's one of the things where the background, so a known background, member background is not available on text block. So this cannot be set. And we have actually to remove the background here because it's not available. So let's try to build that again and see if there's probably not the behavior. So we have to add the behaviors there. Behaviors, maybe, if we're gonna find that. WPF. Okay, so UWP managed. And let's see if that works properly. So there was another issue that was open already with the fact that the brush was not setting its content properly because of the string conversion. So that would be a good occasion to fix that properly. Okay, so Visual Studio is doing something. I'm waiting on something, not sure what. Probably should have launched the application without the debugger. Probably not that useful there. Still waiting on MS Build. Probably downloading something up. Let's see. Giving it a few more seconds, but if not, we're gonna try to restart. Okay, not helping. Still starting up a few things behind, but no, not helping. Okay, so let's try that. Let's try that again. Still not helping. Oh yeah, it crashed. So it's using those the error reporting that's coming up. Okay, so let's open another one. I think it was my app. Let's see again if Visual Studio is if the UWP version of the application is doing what we're supposed to do. I'm going to start without the debugger this time. I don't know if my solution was doing something incorrect. Maybe. We'll see. Okay. Okay, so starting the app. And okay, so that you see, so Windows, so WinUI is doing the right thing because now you can see that the height has changed and the color is now yellow. So that means that the block that I wrote here is supposed to be working. So maybe not the user control. I think it was a content control. We can change that one here. But this is supposed to fail. Okay, so this file is here. We're just going to make sure that it's not changed some other way. Oh, I didn't change the right one. Okay, so this is not useful. I can remove it. So I changed the wrong file. Every time I'm modifying that kind of stuff, it's not the right thing. I don't know about you, but when I copy files, I generally modify the wrong one, not the one that I copied over, but the original one. Okay, so I got my user control. So now what I'm going to do is modify the XAML reader, add a new test there to validate that the content, well, that it's actually failing. So I wanted to use that one. So it's named that way. And this is a content control. And we're going to run that one specifically. So I don't know if Test Explorer is here. Okay, so let's adjust that a little bit because real estate is not that good. Okay. So it failed to build. I'm not sure exactly why. That dreaded bug. Okay, so let's close Visual Studio. So I've been chasing that one, and you know, since the 1610 preview, for some reason, sometimes the build is going to just do this, and I'm not sure exactly why. Sometimes it's related to some process that's lingering from Visual Studio, namely the perf Watson here. So sometimes killing it helps, but sometimes it does not. So let's see if it helped there. No, it did not. Okay, so one of the things that you can do is close Visual Studio and start it again. That's one of the joys of testing previews, and that one is quite annoying. So we'll see if that helps. So no, there's actually an open issue on Visual Studio and community that shows what to try. And in some cases, I've seen reports of people having to rebooted the machine and it still doesn't work, and it may be that removing the .vs folder that's generated by Visual Studio can help. So just so you know. So let's see. Does the build work properly this time? Well, the build didn't start yet. No, it hasn't started yet. Okay, so let's start it manually. It takes a bit of time. No, still not working. Okay, so that one is pretty annoying. So we're going to try to find what's lingering there. If it's still lingering, if something is still lingering, I'm going to try to find what. So there's still a Visual Studio opened. I forgot about the other one. Okay, so what's still here? So there's one Visual Studio missing standard collector. So we're going to kill that one as well. Let's see if there's another one that's lingering. It's mostly Windows here. There's Edge running. Just that bootstrapper we can kill. Okay, there are still a few things with Node running. Kill that as well. Okay, let's try again. So have you, if any of you listening now, have you encountered that issue? Have you found any other types of workaround if you have? Because it's quite annoying not being able to build is, yeah. So you can still build in the command line, but it's not particularly useful, especially if you want to run tests from the CI. Okay, so that works now. Okay, see, so it's probably another process that was there lingering. There was a developer at Microsoft that was asking me about some preview option that was supposed to be turned on but was not on my end, but still causes the issue. So I think it was fast load something. Well, it's actually not there anymore. Oh, it's because I'm using the stable version. So in 16.10, there's a new option that's called launch asynchronously or something like that. And that one seems to have been causing some of the issues, but it was not enabled on my side, so it still was failing. Okay, still building. So that one's going to go away when moving to .NET 6, hopefully. Because .NET 5 and 6 have long path support enabled by default, something that is not enabled by default when using .NET the .NET. If I hear Emo's gonna probably try to strangle me some point if I say .NET full framework. So it's the .NET 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 versions of .NET that are used by Visual Studio that people try to name somehow the .NET full framework, which is not quite right. So still building the tests, and we'll still be having something that fails. Okay, so when that kind of things fails, it's inside the inside of Uno UI. There's the XAML reader that we're going to find in markup, if I remember correctly. Here. And in there, we're doing all sorts of things to try to build the visual tree that was passed as a string to the reader. So if we see the test that is probably starting to run, or is about to run, or failed to run somehow. Let's see. No, it's just building. So if I run the test, the build succeeded, and it should be running now. So it should fail because it's going to try to create a version of that class that is not available. So we may need to invoke the converter when we're trying to get to that. The conversion method I was mentioning before. Okay, so for some reason it didn't run that one. So it failed. Let's try again, let's see. So if it does fail again, it could be related to something that's happening inside. We'll see quickly. No, okay, so let's try to debug. Maybe we're missing something. No, it still doesn't work. Okay, so let's see. The test explorer is sometimes doing some kind of black magic. I wish there was a way to see more of what's happening there. I mean, it's telling you that it's executing tests, but it's, you know, the test failed. It didn't run for some reason, but you don't know why. And yeah, see, it's still failing. It's still not trying to run that test. So there's probably something else that is missing there. Let's see if I try to run another one, maybe. Yeah, it's still not doing anything. Let's see if we can try with the preview bits of Visual Studio. Maybe there's something that will help there. So when we're trying to go and convert the brush, so the string to a brush, we're going to have to detect that the type that we're trying to create cannot be created and needs to be going through some converter that is available there. So from that part, we're going to try to run that one again and see if that helps. So Text Explorer, still not loaded up. There it is. So in the XAML reader, we have in the XAML object builder, we have a few things here that are parsing the content and trying to build the final object model. And one of the things that we can see here is in all this, you can see the load object here. So we're talking XAML object builder CS line 108. So 108 is actually doing this. So if the type is known, so we're trying a few things like, is it a framework template? Is it a resource dictionary? Is it a string, or is it a primitive, or that kind of things, where we know that we can convert from one type to another. But one thing that we're not testing out is, you know, brush specifically and a few others. So can we create the type from the string directly? And we're going to try to find out. So in here we have a member initialization here, and we're going to try to find out if we can do that properly. So still building there. Okay, so one of the things that we can do is, and it's something that we don't know how .NET does that, or WinUI does that. So does WinUI take a brush specifically because it has a converter and it's a string as the input? Or is it because brush is a special case? Or is it, you know, any other kind of type, like for instance, you know, if the type can be created manually, is it possible? So if I for instance create a point or a size from a string, where does that go? So do we need to make a general case for those types, or is there a specific case that needs to be done for brush? that we're going to try to find out. What I do know is that we have special cases inside of the function that's called XAML XAML binding helper. Actually, not that one. It's moving somewhere else in markup. So when we have convert value here, we're calling a method that's called convert. And that method is doing all sorts of tricks to be able to do the conversion. And most notably do something that is called a fast convert, in which we're doing all sorts of already known types of conversions. So for instance, we have a fast solid brush converter, which takes if the color, if it's a known color, we do that. Or if it's I think we have something for brushes below. So we have color here, that's coming from color. There's a fast string to brush convert. So that's the one that's going to be used. So it parses the input. So we can probably use that one directly and do the conversion from the XAML object builder somewhere in there in one of those conditions. So depending on which one is available, we're going to be trying to do that if my build ends up finishing. Okay, so will it run this time? That is the question. So I know that the Visual Studio team has been pushing a lot of thing outside, so it's still failing for some reason, and I don't know why. Okay, so for now we're going to skip that part because I don't know exactly why my Visual Studio is not happy with this. It's probably something that was killed somewhere, but not helping. Yeah, and in tests, no tests available. They're executing tests. No test available in UI test. Oh, that's interesting. It says make sure test discover and execute a registered platform version. Okay. So that's interesting. So maybe it's something that was updated in Visual Studio that we've missed. That could be. Were there updates for that? There were some updates. So there's that one, and there's a test adapter. So we're at 2.1.1, and that's not the most recent. So there's 2.2.3. Okay, well, let's try to do that. Let's try to update to 2.2.3. So test adapter to 2.2.3, and same for test framework, which we're going to update to same thing, 2.2.3. Maybe that's going to help. We don't. Who knows? Let's try again. At least there was actionable error somehow. Okay, so could not load file because Microsoft Test Platform Adapter Utilities 15 was not found. Could be that's interesting. I wonder if it's about NuGet restores. It's because it finds all the content. It does actually find the tests, but it fails to parse them for some reason because it cannot load the test platform adapter utilities file that's mentioned here. Okay, still failing. I wonder where that file comes from. Okay, let's skip that one for now. We're going to be doing the testing directly into the application, and we'll do the testing afterwards, or fixing this afterwards. Maybe it's specific to my machine. Who knows? Okay, so what we're going to try to do first is try to find. We're gonna try to fix it just by fixing if the type is brush explicitly. We're gonna try to invoke the converter directly. So if brush for now, I'm going to try to adjust that afterwards if that needs to be generalized and not just for brush specifically. And if initialization has a value that is a string, then we call the XAML conversion. So it's XAML binding helper, convert value. And what we want is a brush. And it's type of. And we're going to convert the first value, which is the string value that we provided here. So that alone should be enough to say that if we have a brush as an input, convert it to its equivalent of a brush from the string, which is going to be using a solid color brush instead. So we're going to close Visual Studio, the solution here, and we're going to open the one that builds for WebAssembly instead. So here we're going to change the net46 to be a net started 2. And we're going to open the WebAssembly one instead. So when building for that target, that allows us to take the application that we had and override the version that's inside so that we can test out the changes right away. So what we're going to do is upgrade the WebAssembly application to use a later version. So we don't want to override. So the way it works is that we're going to override the installed version in the NuGet cache with a custom version, and we generally don't recommend overriding one of the stable versions. So what we're going to do is update to one of the later. So let's take that one. That looks fine. That looks fine. So it's a 380 dev 171. So once it's updated, still updating, but that should be good. I'm just going to wait a little bit. Once it's done, it's going to be updated. Okay. There it is. So we take that version that was updated for both packages here, and we go to our solution here, and we update the file, the override file that was that I changed a little bit before. So it's the cross-targeting override props file. And at the end of the file, we get to change just that version to put another one. So what we do now is build for that target specifically. So we're going to be able to build, let's say, the runtime WebAssembly here. And we're going to get a newer build specifically for that one. So when building using that override here, what happens is that you get into a specific mode in the UNO solution that will override the current NuGet cache with the build that was just the new binary that you will building with your application to the location where the application that uses that version is going to be taking the binaries from. So it's one bit of a trick. I mean, it's something that NuGet doesn't do by default, which probably should be doing by default, kind of allowing for custom overrides of NuGet packages, but it's not something that's available. So that's how our way in UNO to do that kind of things and override assemblies that way. So it's the same thing for the others. So let's say same thing here. You get NuGet overriding a cache for that one. Oh, got a failure here. Okay, so string value cannot be declared in scope because we're probably defining it twice. Yes, because it was defined already here. Brush string value. Okay. So if we build again, then that file is going to be overridden in the same way. And you're going to get a custom build that you can try out directly inside of your application without having to you do some fancy hoop jumping that's generally needed when you're modifying some binaries coming from another solution. Okay, so you can see here that the package cache has been overridden using the target that I needed, 380.171. So now if I go back in the application and run it again, now the binaries that are going to be compiled against are going to be the ones that I just published and built using the UNO solution. So it's kind of a next step, and you have a source link when you're building. So what did I do? I'm probably in a too old version of the UNO branch here. That's probably why. Let's do this. Let's do this. Take the origin. We're going to be rebasing what we have here on top of the latest master. I don't think I have anything specific there. I can probably should be pulling. Pull should be doing it. Nope, not pull. It's just let's do. I don't have anything there. Yeah. I have a few things. I still have tests. No, it's not auto stash. I have that as a command that's available already. Auto squash. Auto stash without the dash. Okay, that's better. Probably I just have a small conflict here. Let's see. What's the conflict here? Yeah, the versions was probably a bit too old. And I probably should have closed the solution before doing the rebase. That's one of the things that that Visual Studio doesn't like that much. You're changing the solution files or project files under the covers like that. Doesn't like it that much. Yeah, okay, so let's do it manually. Okay. So nice solution here soon, I guess. What did I do? That's interesting. Okay. I thought I opened the folder, but it doesn't look like it did. So this one's still frozen. Yeah, it's going to close eventually. Okay, so we're in the changes, and we're going to be changing for merging for the complex. I don't know what those are. Oh yeah, that's the updates that I did for the versions. Okay, testnet SDK. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so now let's rebuild all this, and we should be able to update that into UNO specifically. Just building the runtime here. Okay, so it's surveillantly rest. That's good. Okay, so we're good. So now one of the things that we could try is understand what type of other things that need to be changed that way. So if we were to be loading some other type of content there, and what we can try is, let's see. I think I had that. I think it's the XAML Studio. Do I have XAML Studio installed? No, I don't have XAML Studio. Okay, I'm gonna install that one. So Microsoft Store. So XAML Studio by the XAML Llama. And that one allows to just test a few things very quickly. And namely test some XAML, you put some XAML there, and that tool is actually using the XAML reader as well. So you can validate behaviors without having to create an application and compile and everything like that. So I'm just going to create a new file, and we're going to try that one specifically. So that is, so if I, in the content, if I put something like a brush, and I say, nope, not the right one. I had a, so it mentions line 3. Maybe I don't need this one. It wants me to save. So there was a, so maybe the newer version of the tool is doing something different. So let's see. No, it's updating right away. Okay, so it's not that. So if I'm doing a brush like this, and I do 1, 2, 3. Failed to assign property content because solid color brush. Okay, so we can see here that that one was actually translated correctly to solid color brush. But if we use, let's say, size, for instance. Okay, so for instance, for some reason, size doesn't like. Okay, so maybe it's just you do this. No, the conversion is not done automatically there. So it's just another type. It looks like, it's interesting. It looks like probably an issue in the parsing, because when I go back, I do this, it works. And if I do this, yeah, that's interesting. It says solid color brush again, but it's not a solid color brush that I put there. It's a size. So maybe there's something with the parser there. Okay, so the build succeeded here. So if I go back to the application and I restart the application again, now the files that I've been overwriting in the other one, so this time I probably won't be having a linker issue. So there was the linker issue that says that some type was missing. So now the type, it won't probably be missing because the binaries will match. Okay, so the application is starting up. So it's still not working. So what are we missing here? Cannot create an abstract class for this. So are we using the right one? So yes, we're using the right one. Probably missing something else. So we're line 11 and 12. And probably we're missing something else. So let's take a look at what we're seeing here. We're actually gone there. But here, so it may not be initialization, could be something else. Could be that the members are not the right ones. So what we could do, what could we do? So when we take a look at the way the XAML is built in the XAML behaviors, it takes this form. So it's using C, putting the value in between inside of a content control. So that would mean that for some reason, the inner value that's provided here would not be the right one. So maybe it's not what we expect it to be. So maybe the content there is not an initialization, but maybe it's something else. But it's written as this is written the same way as the others. So it could be something else. Okay, so what we can do, what we can do. Let's see. Okay, so if it's in WebAssembly doesn't work properly, we're going to go back to Skia. So Skia is easier to debug because that one doesn't do the right thing. So it would have been easier if the test would have worked, but it's not working. So let's do something else. It shows what we can do when targeting different targets. So when using different targets. So that one is net standard 2. So now we're going to be opening the one from Skia, and we're going to be building for Skia specifically. And now by doing this, we're going to be able to go to the debugger. We're going to be able to debug the XAML reader specifically and see where it goes, because that's not what's happening there. So we're going to have to update the application the same way. So I'm going to be building that one. So previously the application was not building here. I'm just going to align the version there. So it's for the WebAssembly versions here. So 3.8.171. Let's put the same thing there in the GTK head. So that one is building properly. And we're going to be able to debug that object builder when it gets there. Still building the Uno Skia. Still updating, but this one is it's targeting the right. It's using the right target, so it's using. It's overriding NetSnare 2, but it's overriding the one specifically for Skia. Okay. So it's downloading a few things from GTK for the build. So that's a GTK runtime itself, if I remember correctly. Okay, so that's good. Now, not Tizen. So it was not building previously, but now I wonder if it'll do better. No, it doesn't do better. Okay, so that one is interesting. I'm wondering if it's something that's in that target that's not working properly. Okay, we're gonna disable the Roslyn generators for now. Definitely not supposed to happen. So one of the things that can be done is to disable the source generator in the build prop. So you get that property that's Uno UI use Roslyn source generators. So it's enabled by default when targeting .NET 5, but in some cases it may not work properly. So you can set it to false. It will basically do the same, but it will not go through the Roslyn generators hosted by Visual Studio itself, but will do it using. Okay, so there's definitely something that doesn't work there. Object behaviors. Ah, that's right. Okay, so that's the reason it doesn't work is because the XAML behaviors are not installed. So we're gonna add those there. Okay, so that explains why it did fail originally. It's because the interactivity and manage were not there. It's probably something that we'll need to fix because the error messages were not clear enough to be troubleshooted properly. Okay, so the build succeeded. Now we're gonna see if we can get to the location where the exception happens. So we click here, so it failed. And we have the cannot create instance, cannot create an abstract class here. So if we hook onto all the exceptions and start again, we should be ending up at that location. So we cannot create an abstract class. So what we are trying to understand is why that's unknown content. It's not initialization. Okay, so that's one of the interesting things is that depending on the type, if it's a known member, like in the X namespace or others, the XML, the XAML reader will automatically tag content of XML nodes with a specific name. So that one would be initialization for string, for instance, or others, like primitives, like integers and others. But brush is not known. So that one is not called initialization. It's called, failed the name. It's called unknown content. So we're going to take unknown content and put that in place here. And because we have hot reload here, so that was something else. It's not particularly useful. So there we have cannot create an abstract class again. But maybe we missed something else. So let's rebuild that one quickly. Ah, yes, the hot restart cannot work because it's another solution. It works if you're inside of the same one, but not inside of in another one. So now we're inside of another solution, so that doesn't work. So let's rebuild that one again. So we go back to Uno because we changed the generation, the code, the XAML reader. So now we're back to Uno, building it again, overriding the NuGet cache. And then once the NuGet cache is updated, then we can go back to the application that we're testing with and validate that the behavior is the right one. So now we're done with that one. So let's try again. So that is not particularly useful. It's the hot reload server. So it's still not working, but still go there and see if we missed something. So it still cannot create an abstract class. So it looks like we missed something else. So let's do it again. Or so we can see here that we're inside of interactions, which is nice. So this is something that works because of source link. So this part of the stack is not something that we've built locally, but it got downloaded automatically by Visual Studio, so we can see what's there and what was passed as parameters and things like that. Well, the evaluation failed for some reason. We can see the content of the XAML that's generated. We can see here that it's a C brush with the content there. But for some reason, the build is not picking up the changes, so we're just going to be rebuilding to make sure. Too many exceptions. And it's yellow. Good. Okay, so that fixes that part of the issue, but we don't know if additional types may need to be manipulated that way. So there may be things like if there's a converter and there's a string in there just specifically. So let's say do we need to have a specific list of types that are known that I don't know. So we're going to have to find that one out. But for now, having access to just one of the types is probably good enough for now. But in a generalized case, we probably need something else that handles more types. So let's say if we were to put a size instead, would it work? Maybe, maybe not. So we'll try to find that one out later. Okay, so that's it for today. So I hope you liked it. So we kind of dug deep into the XAML reader and what it does and what does not, and quite a few issues with Visual Studio today. The debugger, the unit testing tooling is generally working better in general, but not this time. So until next week, I hope you'll be having fun, and let us know about the Uno check tool if you're getting a chance to test it out. So until then, happy coding, and see you next Tuesday. Bye.